Your father left you the inn because even he knew you weren't fit to run a press. Martinvale said it before 16 compositors, then placed the keys to the bankrupt Bell and Crown in Lydia Mercer's ink-stained palm. He kept Mercer printing, its contracts, in every typecase she had managed for 11 years. She received a coaching in with cracked chimneys, 92 pounds in unpaid rates, and 7 days before seizure. Lydia could sign his release and leave with nothing, or enter Dorchester's grave for bad debts. She took the keys. That night, searching for anything of value, she found the inn's guestbook in a desk. Every page after 1849 was blank, yet the paper carried faint indentations, and its sizing smelled unlike the shop paper she knew. Lydia held one leaf near the stove, expecting damp to curl it. Brown letters rose from the page. 9 women's names appeared in a column. The 5th belonged to Lydia's mother, who had never visited the Bell and Crown. Beside each name stood a room number, though the inn possessed only 6 rooms and the list reached 12. Then someone tried the locked front door. Lydia slid the book beneath her coat and went to learn where room 12 had been. The latch strained once. A man swore under his breath. "Lydia, open this door." Martin had returned less than 2 hours after giving her the keys. She pushed the guestbook under her coat, lowered the stove lid, and crossed the taproom. Through a crack in the shutter, she saw his hat and the silver head of his cane. A second man stood by the gate with a lantern. "What do you want?" she called. "An abstract I left in the desk. It belongs to the press." The desk had contained only the guestbook, a dried wafer box, and 2 dead beetles. Lydia kept her hand on the bolt. "You searched the place yesterday. Then you won't mind my looking again." His voice had lost the easy amusement he used before employees. She heard his cane tap twice on the step. When she did not move, he offered her a guinea to surrender the keys by morning. "You called the building worthless at noon. A guinea is generous for a night's inconvenience. Then keep your guinea." The man at the gate shifted his lantern. Martin's face tightened. "The county officer comes on Thursday. He'll inventory every chair and skillet. Whatever you think you found will be carried out with the rest." He knew she had found something. Lydia felt the edge of the book against her ribs. "Good night, Martin." She slid the inner bar into its brackets. His cane struck the door once, hard enough to shake grit from the lintel. Then the 2 men went away. Lydia waited until the lantern disappeared around High West Street. She returned to the stove and warmed the page again. Her mother's maiden name surfaced in brown. Eleanor Harland, room 12. A date followed it, the 3rd of October 1849, and a tiny mark shaped like an open hand. Lydia had seen that mark before. It appeared beneath the final line of several old-school readers printed by Mercer and Harland, the name her father had stopped using before Lydia was born. The front room was too cold for sleep. She carried a horsehair mattress down from the least damaged bedroom and laid it behind the bar. Before banking the fire, she wrapped the guestbook in her spare petticoat and tied it beneath the mattress ropes. At dawn, she spent 8 pence on a new padlock and 6 pence on bread, cheese, and lamp oil. She had £3 11s remaining, no wages coming, and a building the town expected to lose within a week. When the ironmonger asked where to send the lock, Lydia said, "The Bell and Crown." He paused over his receipt book. "You're staying there?" "Yes." Speaking the word made the choice real. Lydia carried the lock back herself. Samuel Reed arrived while she was fitting it. He was a broad-shouldered joiner in a coat shiny at both elbows, with a folding rule tucked behind one ear. Lydia knew him by sight from the press. He had collected handbills for his coach repair shed and always counted the sheets before paying. "That screw will split the jam," he said. "Good morning to you, too." He took the gimlet from her, bored a narrower pilot hole, and set the screw without asking permission. Then he stepped back to examine the front wall. "Martin sent you?" Lydia asked. Samuel shook his head. "Mrs. Priest saw a lamp here. She thought vagrants had got in." The baker next door was watching through flour-dusted glass. When Lydia looked over, Judith Priest turned away with remarkable speed for a woman of 58. Samuel walked through the taproom, testing boards with his heel. He refused to light the kitchen range until he had inspected its flue. The east chimney had opened along a mortar joint, and one heavy rain could send bricks through the ceiling. Water had softened the wall behind 2 upstairs bedrooms. The pump gave 3 strokes of brown water, and then nothing. "How much to make one room safe?" Lydia asked. "Safe for what?" "Sleeping, working, refusing to leave." He looked at her then. His expression held no pity, which she appreciated. 12 shillings for the kitchen flue if I reuse sound brick. Another 8 for the taproom window. The roof wants £40, and a season of decent weather. Lydia almost laughed. I have £3. Then spend none until you see the distress list. As if summoned by the phrase, County Officer Haynes came through the yard carrying a leather folder. He was older than Lydia expected and embarrassed by his own authority. The notice he pinned beside the door allowed 6 clear days before the levy. Furniture, brewing copper, kitchen iron, stable fittings, and any saleable stock would be taken toward the unpaid rates. The bed too? Lydia asked. If it belongs to the premises, it belonged to my mother. He wrote that beside the item. Bring a receipt or witness on Thursday. Martin had told her 7 days. In truth, she had 6. Officer Haynes unfolded an older plan to identify the stable fittings. Lydia held one corner against the breeze. 6 guest rooms occupied the upper floor. Below them sat a kitchen, tap room, parlor, and office. The north coach house was divided into stalls and 2 fodder stores. There was no room 12. She asked when the plan had been drawn. After the smoke claim of 1,852, what burned? The northern rooms, according to this. He pointed at a shaded block beside the coach house. Rebuilt as stores. Samuel studied the wall from the yard. That brick is older than 1,852. Haynes gave him a warning look. I only record what's in the schedule. After he left, Lydia scraped moss from the joint Samuel had noticed. The bricks on both sides were fired to the same uneven red, and the lime had aged alike. No rebuilding line crossed the wall. Above the stable doors, 6 small vents had been filled with timber and painted black. Rooms 7 through 12, Lydia said. Samuel measured the coach house. Outside length exceeded the inside by nearly 9 feet. There's space missing, he said. Could be a thick feed passage. Could be rot and wishful thinking. Judith Priest came over with a pot of tea and 2 currant buns. She set them down as if delivering medicine to a contagious household. Did women lodge here in 1,849? Lydia asked. Judith's hand stopped arranging the cups. Travelers lodged here. My mother's name is in the register. Eleanor Harland? Lydia had not spoken the surname. Judith collected the empty cloth from her basket. Girls came after dark. That's all I know. What girls? Working ones. Quiet ones. People said enough about them while they were alive. She moved toward the door, then looked back. If Martin Vale asks, I brought tea and saw nothing. Lydia waited until Samuel had gone for tools. She unwrapped the register and examined it beside the window. In the press, she had tested new batches of paper by touch, light, and breath. These pages contained rag fiber with a hard gelatin size, expensive for an in-book. The faint smell came from a wash laid over the original ink. She heated the flat of a kitchen knife, wiped it clean, and passed it beneath the next leaf without touching. More entries appeared. Each carried a woman's name, a room number, a date, and a sum between 6 pence and 2 shillings. No arrival town, no destination, no horse, no bed charge. They were payments. At the bottom of every 4th page stood the open hand mark. Lydia copied what she could before the words cooled. By noon, she had 27 names and 6 dates. Her mother appeared on every date, always beside room 12. Samuel returned with brick, lime, and his 12-year-old daughter, Nell. The girl had come to carry kindling and spent the first hour pretending not to stare at the register. Can you read it? Lydia asked. Nell bent over the cooled page. There's nothing there. Lydia warmed one corner. A name emerged. Nell drew in a breath. Is it magic? Chemistry, Lydia said. Which is more useful? She showed Nell how certain fruit acids darkened with heat. This ink was smoother and less brown, possibly made with milk and a trace of iron salt. Whoever prepared it had known paper well enough to keep it legible for 25 years. Samuel rebuilt the worst section of flue. Lydia carried mortar, swept soot, and sorted salvage into 3 groups: necessary, saleable, and unsound. Under a pile of mildewed menus, she found 12 brass number plates. 7 through 12 were smaller than the bedroom plates and pierced for screws at each end. Samuel turned number 12 over in his hand. Its back bore the open hand mark. Wishful thinking just improved its case, he said. They fitted the plates against the filled vents over the coach house doors. The screw holes matched marks in the old timber. Before dusk, Lydia scrubbed the taproom table and hung a sheet across the broken window. Samuel's repairs made the kitchen fire safe enough to boil water. It was a small claim on a large ruin, but the inn now had 1 warm room, 1 working lock, and 2 people willing to return in the morning. Lydia needed money before Thursday. She carried her composing stick and a sample of her work to the Dorchester Chronicle. Its owner, Mr. Pomeroy, had bought paper from Mercer Printing for years. He listened while keeping both hands on his desk. "Martin says you altered the railway circular account," he said. "The account was set twice. I corrected it. He says the duplicate was yours." Lydia took a galley proof from her portfolio. "His foreman locked the form before I saw it. The first proof carries his initials." Pomeroy found the initials. His mouth tightened. "I won't quarrel with Mercer Printing." "Then don't. Sell me 3 hours at your hand press after closing. I have a customer if I can find one." "You have no type. Rent me a case of job letters." He studied her ink-roughened fingers. 2 shillings a night, paper extra, nothing on credit." Lydia agreed. Her first customer was Officer Haynes. She offered to reset the county sale notices after finding 3 inconsistent dates in his handwritten copy. He ordered 200 sheets for 18 shillings, due Wednesday morning. She set the type through the night, corrected her own proof twice, and pulled the sheets with Pomeroy's apprentice working the lever. At dawn, Pomeroy counted the clean impressions. Martin would have charged £1. "Martin has gaslight and a cylinder press. You have stubbornness. It costs less to maintain." Haynes paid on delivery. Lydia used 12 shillings for the chimney, 4 for food and lamp oil, and placed 2 toward the rates. Haynes accepted the part payment and postponed seizure of the kitchen iron for 3 days. He could not delay the full levy without authority. When she returned, Nell was reading an old broadside near the repaired window. She kept losing her place in the narrow columns. Lydia took charcoal and drew larger letters on scrap wrapping paper. "The lines are too close," Nell said. "For you?" "For everyone after a day's work." The remark stirred a memory. Mercer and Harlan's earliest school readers used unusually large type and generous spacing. Martin had dismissed them as wasteful old editions, yet railway companies still ordered their accident notices in the same face. Lydia warmed another guestbook leaf. Beside her mother's name, the sum was 1 shilling, and the words 12 lines appeared in smaller script. She first read it as a room charge. Now she noticed a printer's dot between the number and the word. 12 lines was a measure of type. She placed the brass plate beside the entry. Its width matched 12 lines of the old large face exactly. Samuel watched her arrange the pieces. So room 12 wasn't for sleeping. It may have been a workstation. Inside 9 feet of missing wall? Lydia looked toward the coach house. Someone had covered its vents, shortened its interior, and persuaded the county that the northern rooms had burned. On Thursday morning, before Officer Haynes returned, she found fresh mud beneath the new padlock. A thin blade had scored the keyhole during the night. Martin had tried the door again. Officer Haynes arrived at 9 with 2 porters and found Lydia waiting beside 3 neat piles. She had attached a written claim to every object that belonged to her mother. Judith swore to the horsehair mattress and walnut sewing table. Samuel produced an old receipted bill for tools he had left in the stable. The brewing copper belonged to a supplier whose mark was stamped beneath its rim. Haynes rubbed his forehead. "You've made a profession of being difficult. I made a profession of keeping accurate accounts." The saleable property shrank to 8 chairs, 2 bedsteads, 4 iron grates, a cracked mirror, and stable fittings worth less than the cost of removal. Haynes scheduled the auction for Monday and left the items in place under seal. Breaking a seal would bring a charge. Their presence gave Lydia 4 more days of shelter. She asked to see the full rate account. The £92 covered 6 years, including 4 years when the inn had stood in her father's name. Interest and collection fees made up nearly a quarter. Martin had transferred the liability to her with the property, yet he had controlled the rents from 2 cottages on its rear boundary. "Were those rents credited?" Lydia asked. Haynes followed the column with one blunt finger. "No cottages appear in the assessment. They appear on the deed abstract Martin gave you." He closed the folder. "If you can show the collector was paid elsewhere, I can correct an account. I can't invent money that never reached him." The county record room occupied a cold chamber behind the assize offices. Lydia spent Friday comparing rate books, fire schedules, and road plans while dust dried her throat. Samuel remained at the inn to board the east bedrooms. Judith agreed to watch the door from her bakery. The 1,847 insurance plans showed the coach house intact. 6 narrow chambers stood over its northern stalls, reached by a stair from the harness room. They were labeled Workrooms 712. The 1,852 claim recorded smoke damage to 2 rafters and a payment of £6.8s. No rooms had burned. 3 months later, a replacement plan called the same space-sealed fodder storage. The alteration had been witnessed by Cedric Vale, Martin's father. Lydia copied the entries, paid the clerk 6 pence to certify them, and asked for the rent's ledger. The missing cottages had been assessed separately until 1868. After that, their rent went to Mercer Printing under the phrase Harlan charge. At the press, those two words named an account Martin never allowed Lydia to balance. He told her it covered old paper debts. She returned after dark and found Martin beside the coach house wall. Judith stood in the yard with a bread peel held across her body. "Mr. Vale says he has a right to inspect," Judith said. "Mr. Vale lies easily when he's cold," Lydia replied. Martin brushed lime dust from his glove. "The railway surveyor needs the rear boundary cleared. I came to save you a fee. You said the inn had no value. The company may widen its goods approach. It's a possibility, nothing more." Lydia showed him the certified insurance copy. "Why did your father erase 6 workrooms after a fire that never occurred?" His eyes moved across the page once. "Because respectable owners didn't advertise an illegal night press." It was the first honest sentence he had given her. "Who worked there?" "Women who stole type and printed radical trash. Your mother among them." Lydia's grip tightened on the paper. Martin lowered his voice. "Eleanor begged my father to keep her name out of court. Your father married her after the scandal and spent 20 years repairing the family's reputation. Let the dead keep what dignity they have. You came back twice for the Guestbook." "I came for company property." "Which company?" He gave her a thin smile. "Accept £130 for the inn. I'll discharge the rates and allow you a reference. By Tuesday, the offer falls to whatever the auction leaves. The amount would clear the account and give her enough to rent 1 room. It would also place the railway approach in his hands." Lydia folded the certified copy. "No." Martin looked past her toward the black vents. "Then you'll lose it in public." The next morning, Lydia removed the Guestbook's binding thread from one gathering. She had learned sewing from her mother before she learned type. 3 folded sections carried most of the names. Their inner margins contained a repeating sequence of short and long strokes, too regular for casual pen tests. Nell watched from across the table. "Is it another message?" "It may be instructions for setting type." Lydia arranged brass plates 7 through 12 in order. Their screw holes divided the long and short strokes into 6 groups. Read as compositors' case positions. The first group spelled E.P. Judith, leaning over the kettle, dropped a spoon. "Esther Pike," she said. "You know her?" "She lives in Weymouth. Men's sails near the harbor, if she's still alive." Judith stared at the open gathering. "She was 17 when your mother brought her here." Samuel could spare Sunday afternoon. He drove Lydia to Weymouth in his delivery cart, 12 miles each way over rutted road. They found Esther in a narrow room above a chandlery, pushing a needle through canvas with a leather palm. Her hair was white, her back straight, and her first response to Eleanor Harlan's name was to open the door for them to leave. Lydia placed the brass number 12 on the table. Esther sat down. "Where did you find that?" "At the Bell and Crown. Cedric said he melted them." "Cedric Lead." Esther gave a dry, unamused laugh. Then his son learned honestly. She would not describe the workrooms until Lydia showed her the insurance plan and the copied names. Esther touched 3 with the blunt end of her needle. 1 woman had died of lung fever. Another had gone to Canada. A third still lived outside Bridport and refused to speak of printing. "Were you thieves?" Lydia asked. "We were compositors, engravers, binders, and colorists. Mercer and Harlan paid men 22 shillings a week. We received 9 when they remembered. My father owned the firm. Your father was 19 and frightened of Cedric Vale. Your mother was the better printer." The words hurt in a place Lydia had kept closed since childhood. Eleanor had died when Lydia was 9. Lydia remembered ink beneath her nails, though her father said it came from helping him after hours. Esther explained that the women worked at the inn after ordinary shifts. They designed clear, inexpensive readers for adults who had left school early. Eleanor altered letter spacing and line length after testing pages with quarrymen, laundresses, and railway porters. The payments in the Guestbook were weekly contributions toward paper, coal, and a mutual fund. "Why hide the names?" Samuel asked. "Cedric threatened dismissal. Married women feared their husbands' employers. A few of us printed union notices." Esther looked at Lydia. "Eleanor made the ink. She said heat could return a name when courage finally caught up with it." "What was in room 12? Esther's face changed. "The master forms and the trust schedule. Your mother moved them before Cedric sealed the rooms." "Where?" "She never told me. She gave me this." From a tin sewing box, Esther lifted a brass compositor's rule. The 12 was engraved near one end, followed by the open hand. Along its edge ran 12 uneven nicks. Eleanor said 12 would open, what 9 could not. I thought she meant the women. There were 9 of us. Lydia set the rule beside her own copied margin marks. The nicks aligned with every 12th stroke. Outside, a church bell marked 4. They had 2 hours of light for the return journey. Esther closed Lydia's fingers around the rule. If Martin knows you found the book, he'll use the same weapon his father used. He'll call us thieves. Then I'll need more than names. Yes, Esther said, you'll need the work. Monday's auction brought 12 people, most seeking cheap iron. Martin stood near the gate with a railway surveyor and made no bids. Officer Haynes sold the chairs, 2 bedsteads, the cracked mirror, and 3 grates for £7 4s. Lydia bought back the kitchen grate for 5 shillings through Judith, who complained loudly about its poor condition to discourage competition. The proceeds scarcely touched the rates. Haynes granted 14 days before applying for an order against the property. He had received Lydia's copied accounts and agreed that the missing cottage rents required examination. It was time, not mercy, and she accepted it gratefully. For the next week, Lydia printed at night and worked on the coach house by day. Pomeroy sent her small jobs he found inconvenient: funeral cards, auction lists, church notices, and 200 labels for a cheese merchant. After press rent, paper, and ink, she cleared £1 17s. Samuel charged only for materials until she could pay his labor. He braced the coach house ceiling and cut through a later pine partition where the old plans showed a stair. The first board revealed a shallow void packed with cinders. The second exposed the lower end of an oak stringer. The stair is still here, he said. They removed cinders by hand to avoid loading the weak floor. 3 steps emerged, then 6, climbing behind the harness room wall. At the top, a door had been faced with lath and plaster from the stable side. Its hinges were reversed, hidden within the sealed space. The brass compositor's rule fit a narrow slot beside the latch. When Lydia pressed it inward, the 12 nicks caught 12 small levers in sequence. The mechanism released with a tired click. Stale air moved through the opening. Room 12 occupied the northern end of the loft. Dust lay thick across a stone press bed, racks for drying sheets, and 6 type cases with warped lids. Smoke blackened 2 rafters, matching the modest insurance claim. The room had never burned. It had been buried. Nell waited below until Samuel tested the floor. When he allowed her up, she stopped beside a wall pasted with faded proof sheets. Their letters were larger than those in her school book. Short sentences explained weights, measures, contracts, and the safe cleaning of machinery. I can read this, Nell said. Lydia ran her hand across a proof titled The Common Reader, Second Form. No author appeared. At the foot of the sheet stood the open hand. A composing frame still held lines of reverse type. Time had crusted the rollers and rusted the chase, yet the letters remained locked in place. Lydia read them backward with a compositor's practiced eye. 9 shares shall hold the rooms in common. The next line was missing. Someone had lifted a full row of type before sealing the chamber. In a drawer, they found paper samples, trial alphabets, and a child's slate marked EH. One corner held a stack of untrimmed readers damaged by damp. The center pages were sound. Lydia turned them until a folded proof fell out. Her mother's corrections filled the margins in blue pencil. Increase leading. Open lowercase e. Ask Mrs. Pike to test after shift. Lydia sat on the edge of the press bed. The mother she remembered had spoken softly, avoided company dinners, and never entered the print shop while Cedric Vale was present. Here, Eleanor's instructions covered every surface. She had directed the work. Samuel pretended to examine a roof brace. Nell read the first paragraph of the broadside aloud, slowly and without losing her line. The discovery enlarged the problem. It proved skilled work had happened there. It did not prove who owned the forms, the property, or the money. The trust schedule Esther remembered was gone. At sunset, Samuel called Lydia to the yard. A narrow strip of fresh white paint marked the rear boundary from the inn wall to the road. A survey stake carried the initials of the South Dorset Railway. Someone had entered while they were in room 12. The following day, a messenger delivered Martin's solicitor's letter. It accused Lydia of removing proprietary type from Mercer Printing, operating an unlicensed press, and damaging a structure pledged as security for unpaid rates. She must surrender the Guestbook, the brass plates, and all printed material bearing the open-hand device within 48 hours. Esther received a harsher letter. Martin charged her with possessing stolen company tools and threatened a criminal complaint unless she signed a statement naming Eleanor as the leader of the theft. He's frightened of a dead woman, Judith said. He's frightened of an account, Lydia replied. Lydia took Esther's letter to Mr. Hugh Lanyon, a solicitor with 2 rooms above a seed shop. His first consultation cost 5 shillings. He read slowly, asked precise questions, and refused to be impressed by the heated writing. "A clever book is evidence that someone made a clever book," he said. "It proves little about title." Lydia laid out the certified fire plan, rates entries, proof sheets, and Esther's brass rule. "Better," he said, "still incomplete." Martin could begin a private prosecution against Esther. Even a failed case would cost her work and reputation. Lanyon could answer the threat, demand inspection of the alleged stolen property schedule, and place Esther's account under sworn declaration. His fee would be £2 10s plus expenses. That money was meant for roof felt in the county account. Rain had opened a stain above the repaired tap room. Samuel warned that another week of wet weather could spoil the surviving type and proof sheets in room 12. Lydia returned to Weymouth and told Esther the choice. "Pay your rates," Esther said. "I've carried their story for 25 years. I can carry it longer. If you sign Martin's statement, he'll use it against every name in the book. If you lose the inn, there'll be no book to argue over." Lydia looked at Esther's sailmaker's palm, polished smooth by decades of pressure. Her mother had hidden the names until they could be spoken safely. Leaving Esther alone now would repeat the silence Martin depended upon. "Come to Dorchester tomorrow," Lydia said. "Mr. Lanyon will take your declaration." She paid his fee. Lanyon's reply forced Martin to identify the property he claimed. His solicitor produced an inventory dated 1851. It listed the Bell and Crown's press bed in common type as having been transferred to Mercer and Vale for £10. The signature beneath the transfer read Eleanor Mercer. Lydia studied the copy under magnification at Pomeroy's desk. The paper carried a mill mark she knew from invoices. "This sheet wasn't sold in Dorset until 1854, she said. Pomeroy checked an old paper merchant specimen book. The watermark matched a rag stock introduced after a boiler reconstruction in 1853. "Can you swear to it?" Lydia asked. "I can swear what the book says. The mill owner can swear when he made it." For the first time, Martin had placed a false document where she could examine it. Lydia spent the rest of her money on oilcloth to protect room 12 and paid 1 week's interest to the county. Lanyon submitted the watermark objection and asked for time to obtain the mill record. Haynes agreed to withhold the property application for 10 more days. Martin answered through the mortgage. Lydia had never seen a separate mortgage deed. Her father's will called the inn freehold, subject to rates. Martin now produced a charge for £160, signed by Edmund Mercer 3 months before his death, and assigned to Vale Commercial Credit. Payment was due at once. The following morning, a bailiff arrived with a possession order from a London creditor and 2 constables. Lanyon inspected the seal and went pale. "This can be challenged," he told Lydia. "It can't be ignored." She had 2 hours to remove personal clothing. The inn, its fixtures, the press room, and every document found on the premises would remain under lock until the hearing. Martin came to supervise the inventory. "You could have taken the guinea," he said. Lydia stood between him and the Guestbook. "You forged Eleanor's transfer. You've mistaken a watermark for a verdict." The constable ordered her aside. Martin lifted the book from the table with gloved hands. It was cool, its pages blank. "This is the great evidence?" he asked. "An empty register?" Judah stepped forward. "Warm it. I won't indulge kitchen theater." He put it in his deed box. Samuel had already moved the certified plans and Esther's declaration to Lanyon's office. Lydia carried her mother's sewing table, 1 dress, and the compositor's rule Esther had entrusted to her. The proof sheets, type, and open-hand readers remained in room 12, under seal. As the creditor's man locked the door, Lydia noticed the mortgage schedule in his hand. The property description included the 2 rear cottages and all rents arising from them. Martin had collected those rents for 6 years while allowing the rate debt to grow. The white railway stake stood just inside the same boundary. Lydia slept that night on Judah's kitchen floor. At 2 in the morning, the smell of smoke woke her. Flames were moving behind the upper windows of the Bell and Crown. Judith struck the iron triangle outside her bakery until windows opened along the street. Samuel came running in shirt sleeves, followed by stablemen from the King's Arms. The parish engine arrived 10 minutes later, dragged by 6 men who pumped while others formed a bucket line from the public well. The possession seal barred the front door. Lydia showed it to the constable who had helped lock the building. "Break it," he said. Samuel drove an axe beside the lock. Smoke rolled through the tap room, thick with the smell of oil and scorched paper. The fire had started in the coach house beneath room 12. Someone had piled straw against the partition and poured lamp oil along the old stair. No one suggested an accident. They stopped the flames before the main roof caught. The harness room was gutted. 3 joists beneath the hidden press chamber burned through, dropping one corner of its floor into the stalls. Water ruined most of the loose proof sheets. The stone press bed and locked iron forms survived. Samuel would not let Lydia climb the damaged stair. At first light, he shored the floor with timbers from his own yard. Only then did they enter. Heat had done what patient warming at the kitchen stove had done to the guestbook. Pale writing covered the margins of dozens of trial sheets. Eleanor and the other women had used the same concealed ink for corrections, payments, delivery numbers, and arguments about line spacing. Water blurred some of it. Enough remained to show a working enterprise with named contributors. Lydia laid the sheets apart on clean boards. She read each while it was still warm and called the words to Nell, who copied them in pencil. Sheet 19, Lydia said. 400 readers delivered to Casterbridge Mechanics Institute, £2 retained for common rooms. Nell wrote carefully. Sheet 23. Mrs. Bell revised injury diagram. Register at Stationers' Hall under Mercer and Harlan. Esther, who had come on the early coach from Weymouth, leaned over the next sheet. That's Rebecca Bell. She drew with her left hand after a loom took 2 fingers from the right. Near noon, a scorched title proof revealed 3 lines beneath its printed border. The counterpart and schedule lie with W.R. Durnford, South Street. Open on presentation of Rule 12 and 2 named shares. Mr. Durnford had been dead for 18 years. His practice had passed through 2 partnerships before its papers were purchased by the firm where Hugh Lanyon trained. Lanyon read the line twice. The deed packets went to a warehouse near the jail. Half were indexed by client, half by property, and some by the name of a fund. It may take days. We have 6 before the possession hearing, Lydia said. Then we start today. The creditor's bailiff protested that fire did not cancel his order. Lanyon obtained temporary authority to remove wet papers for preservation, witnessed by Haynes and the constable. Every sheet received a number. Judith, Esther, and Nell signed the list. Pomeroy lent drying racks from the Chronicle and printed no newspaper that evening. Samuel found a dark coat button near the oil-soaked straw. Mercer Printing used the same stamped brass buttons on its delivery coats. The second man at the gate on Lydia's first night had worn one. Judith remembered his limp and identified him as Jonas Creel, Martin's warehouse foreman. The constable found Creel at the railway tavern with burns along one wrist. He said he had been home all night. His landlady said otherwise. Martin's solicitor called the arrest an attempt to poison the hearing. Martin himself sent word that he knew nothing of the fire. Lydia left that argument to Lanyon. She spent 3 days in the deed warehouse, opening bundles while a clerk checked each string and seal. Dust coated the inside of her sleeves. Most Durnford papers concerned leases, wills, and unpaid bills. No Bell and Crown deed appeared under Mercer, Harland, Vale, or the inn's name. On the 4th morning, Esther joined them with the brass rule. Eleanor called it the common rooms, she said. Try that. The clerk found a narrow entry in an 1850 index. Common Rooms Printing and Benefit Trust, Packet 318. Packet 318 contained a sealed declaration, 2 property schedules, 9 signature slips, and a receipt for stereotype plates deposited at a London printer's warehouse. Lanyon read the documents before he allowed anyone to celebrate. The Bell and Crown, its rear cottages, and the 6 workrooms had been placed in trust by Eleanor and Edmund Mercer. Income from the cottages was to maintain a night press, a reading room, and relief payments for injured or widowed contributors. Cedric Vale and Edmund were named trustees. The 9 women were beneficiaries and working members. Any original teaching work created in the common rooms belonged to the trust. Room 12 held the master forms and controlled the use of the open hand mark. The heated guestbook was the membership schedule. The deposited counterpart became effective when matched with the schedule and the press mark. Does this give me the in? Lydia asked. It shows your father could not mortgage it for his private debt, Lanyon said. Your will may name you, but you would hold the property under the trust. The surviving members retain their rights. Good. He looked up. Most clients take longer to surrender the idea of owning a building outright. I've spent a month learning it was never mine alone. The signature slips carried more pain. Edmund had signed the declaration. He had known what Eleanor built. After Cedric closed the rooms, Edmund continued publishing the Common Reader through Mercer Printing and sent irregular sums to Durnford. Then the payment stopped. A note in Durnford's hand recorded Cedric's claim that all 9 women had abandoned their shares. Esther pressed her lips together. No one asked us. Lydia found her mother's instruction on the final schedule. If the trustees failed, the working members could appoint a trained printer as steward. Eleanor had added Lydia's name in a later memorandum, written when Lydia was 7. The memorandum did not hand her the property. It said Lydia had shown patience with letters, an exact eye, and a dislike of careless spacing. Eleanor hoped the members would consider her when she came of age. Lydia read that sentence alone beside the warehouse window. Her father had taught her to believe she entered printing by his indulgence. Martin had made the same claim cruelly in front of 16 compositors. Eleanor had seen the skill before either man decided what it was worth. There was no pile of money in packet 318. The material value lay in accounts that had never been rendered, rents that had been diverted, plates that still earned fees, and current designs derived from the women's work. Proving the sums would require a receiver, printer's ledgers, contracts, and months of arithmetic. Lydia understood that kind of work. Pomeroy located Stationer's Hall entries for 3 common reader editions and 2 safety broadsides. All named Mercer and Harland as publisher and displayed the open hand. A railway contract on Martin's desk, obtained through the court, paid annual reuse fees for the injury diagrams. Martin had entered those fees as general press income. The mill owner answered Lanyon's inquiry by telegram and letter. The paper bearing Eleanor's alleged 1,851 transfer had first been made in March 1854. His production ledger and sample book survived. The mortgage weakened under the same scrutiny. Vale Commercial Credit had advanced no £160 to Edmund Mercer. Its cash book showed a circular payment from Martin's personal account 2 weeks after Edmund died. The supposed witness was Jonas Creel. Creel asked for a solicitor after learning the paper and cash books had been found. By the next afternoon, he admitted witnessing signatures Martin had already written. He also admitted setting the fire. Martin had told him the creditor's insurance would cover the empty inn and promised him £30 after the railway sale. Creel's statement required proof and cross-examination. It still changed the hearing. The county courtroom was full on Thursday. Word of the heated Guestbook had traveled through Dorchester, improving with every telling. One version claimed Eleanor's ghost wrote accusations in flame. Lydia disliked the story. It made courage sound supernatural and careful work sound easy. Martin sat behind 2 London solicitors. His coat was perfectly brushed. The Guestbook rested in his deed box under an order to produce it. The judge began with possession, title, and the validity of the mortgage. Lanyon presented the trust declaration, the certified property schedules, and the warehouse chain that preserved packet 318. The opposing solicitor argued that the trust had lapsed because its members disappeared and its purpose ended. Esther stood. "I didn't disappear," she said. "Mr. Vale's father dismissed me." 2 other women from the heated list had been traced. Martha Cole came from Bridport with her married daughter. Agnes Bell's son produced her letters and the left-handed injury drawings she had kept. Each witness identified the workrooms, the open-hand mark, and the weekly payments. Officer Haynes showed 6 years of cottage rents credited to Mercer Printing, while the inn's rate account went unpaid. Samuel explained the sealed stair and matched the numbered plates to the insurance plan. Pomeroy produced the paper merchant's specimen book. The mill owner's sworn statement fixed the false transfer sheet 3 years after its written date. Martin watched each piece enter the record. He kept his composure until Lanyon asked for the Guestbook to be warmed. "Its pages are blank," Martin said. The judge looked over his spectacles. "That is what the court is about to determine." A clerk carried in a flat warming plate used for sealing wax. Lydia asked him to keep the heat low and constant. Too much would brown the paper and allow Martin to call the result damage. She opened the register herself. A leaf near the front had been cut away. 2 more showed trimmed inner margins. "Were pages missing when you took possession?" the judge asked Martin. The book was already a ruin. Judith rose from the witness bench. "It was whole when he carried it out." Lydia placed an intact leaf over the warming plate. The first name appeared slowly, followed by Room 9, a payment, and the open hand. A second entry emerged beneath it. The courtroom became so quiet that the grate could be heard ticking. Martin's solicitor objected to a chemical trick. "Every ink is chemical," Lydia said. "The question is when it was applied and whether its contents agree with independent records." She compared the revealed names with Durnford's sealed signature slips. The room numbers matched the property schedule. Payment totals matched 3 surviving receipts. Dates matched the Stationer's Hall entries and the fire insurance plan. The cut page fell exactly where Eleanor Harland's name appeared in Lydia's copy and in Judith's sworn account. Lanyon then produced Martin's railway agreement. It promised vacant possession of the Bell and Crown Yard, free of trusts and occupiers, within 60 days. The purchase price was £2,400. Martin had offered Lydia £130. You called the inn a worthless burden, Lanyon said. The railway interest arose later. The company's survey is dated 3 weeks before the will was read. Martin glanced toward his solicitor. The small movement answered before he did. The judge refused possession, declared the mortgage unsupported pending full trial, and restrained any sale or removal of trust property. A receiver would take the accounts of Mercer Printing, the cottage rents, and the current contracts. The false transfer, mortgage, page removal, and fire were referred to the public prosecutor. The ruling did not make Lydia rich by afternoon. It returned the keys under supervision and gave the trust a chance to live. That was enough. Outside the court, Martin caught her near the stone steps. You think those women will thank you when they see what the accounts are worth? He said. They'll tear the place apart over shillings. Then every shilling will be counted. Mercer Printing cannot survive a receiver. It survived by charging other people for work they were forbidden to claim. His face lost the last of its public calm. Your father understood what reputation costs. Yes, Lydia said. He charged it to my mother. She left him on the steps. The first months after the hearing were harder than the courtroom. The receiver closed Mercer Printing for 12 days, then reopened it under temporary management to complete paid contracts. 6 employees learned that Lydia had never altered the railway account. 4 came to the Bell and Crown to say so. 2 apologized. The others spoke about keeping their wages. Lydia respected the practical concern. She recommended that the receiver retain them all. Martin was charged with conspiracy to defraud, uttering false instruments, and procuring the destruction of trust property. Creel pleaded guilty to setting the fire and gave evidence. The final proceeding took almost a year. Martin lost control of the press, surrendered his railway profit, and was ordered to repay diverted rents and fees. His sentence included imprisonment. Lydia attended only the days when her evidence was required. The trust accounts took 9 months to reconstruct. Some entries were gone forever. Others survived in customer ledgers, bank deposits, and the printed sheets themselves. Lydia, Esther, and Lanyon agreed on conservative claims where proof was incomplete. The receiver credited £386 in diverted rents and contract fees to the Common Rooms Trust, then deducted lawful repair debts and costs. No beneficiary received a fortune. Each surviving member or family received an accounted share. A larger portion remained with the trust because the original declaration required the rooms, press, and relief fund to continue. Restoring the Bell and Crown took 18 months. Samuel replaced the burned joist first, then repaired the main roof in stages. They reopened the pump after a well digger removed a collapsed timber lining. The east bedrooms remained closed through one winter. Lydia refused to borrow against unfinished work, even when it meant setting type in gloves beside a small stove. The receiver sold 1 serviceable Albion hand press and 4 cases of type from Mercer Printing to the trust at an assessed price. Pomeroy sold paper at cost for the first 6 months. Judith supplied bread to the workers and recorded every loaf, including those she claimed were gifts. A trust needs honest accounts, she said whenever Lydia tried to erase a charge. Esther returned to Dorchester twice a week to train 2 young women in composition. Martha Cole taught binding. Agnes Bell's daughter provided her mother's original drawings for a revised safety reader. They kept the old open-hand mark and printed every contributor's name on the title page. Nell became the first formal apprentice. On her first morning, Lydia gave her a composing stick and asked her to set a paragraph from the common reader. The old size? Nell asked. Choose the size you can read after a day in the workshop. Nell chose the larger English face, increased the space between lines, and defended both decisions. Lydia approved the proof. The 6 upstairs rooms reopened for paying guests. The tap room served meals without ale at first because a license cost more than they could spare. Room 12 became the composing room again. Its wall retained 1 scorched beam from the fire, sound enough to stay. Below it, Samuel fitted drawers for the surviving type and a long table where evening students practiced letters, contracts, sums, and machinery instructions. The railway built its goods approach on another parcel. It still ordered timetables and safety notices from the Common Rooms Press, now at ordinary commercial rates. That contract, lodging income, small local jobs, and reader sales covered wages and maintenance. Relief payments went out only after the quarterly accounts balanced. Lydia moved from Judith's kitchen into the smallest upstairs room. She kept her mother's sewing table beside the window. The guestbook returned after the trial, missing 3 pages but carrying the cut edges as part of its history. Lanyon advised placing it in a locked cabinet. Lydia did, and brought it out only when a member or apprentice needed to see why the names had been hidden. Samuel never presented Lydia with a grand declaration. He repaired doors, argued about timber prices, and brought Nell home late after evening classes. In the second spring, he placed 2 cups on the instep and said his lease on the coach shed expired in June. "The south stable could take my benches," he said. "If the trust wants a paying tenant, the trust will want a written agreement." I expected nothing less. His coach repair work moved into the yard that summer. The rent strengthened the maintenance fund. His presence strengthened other things Lydia did not yet put into an account. On the anniversary of the hearing, the press completed a new edition of the Common Reader. Its pages included household arithmetic, plain explanations of leases and wage slips, first aid for workshop injuries, and letters large enough for tired eyes. Lydia set the title for me with Nell beside her. The list of original contributors filled half a page. Esther Pike, Martha Cole, Rebecca Bell. 6 more names followed. Eleanor Harlan Mercer appeared 5th, exactly where it had risen in brown ink over the stove. Lydia locked the final line, inked the form, and drew the first impression. She checked the spacing before she checked her mother's name. Old habits held. Nell lifted the fresh sheet toward the window. Downstairs, evening students were arriving through the open door. Samuel's plane moved steadily in the south stable, and Judith was disputing a flower bill in the yard. Nothing in the room was hidden now. Lydia placed the first clean copy on her mother's sewing table. Then she returned to the press, where the next blank sheet was waiting.